What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm here to present to you a new review of Oko The Ringleader, the latest Planeswalker that Webcore has put out to the world and also to us content creators. So thank you for that, Webcore. Again, a very interesting Planeswalker. The games I've played with Oko The Ringleader, I have found him to be super fun. And so let's go through his abilities and I'll tell you what I think of them, give you kind of the pros and cons, and then we'll get into some gameplay. And then, of course, the final grades on everything. So first, let's look at what he is. He is blue and green, which is personally one of my favorite color combinations in this game. It's just that we haven't had a lot of great blue and green Planeswalkers. I mean, Kiora was the standard for a long time, and she's been one of the best Planeswalkers in the game. When cycling was a thing, Nissa, the blue and green one that revolved around cycling, was really good, but cycling was just overpowered and kind of not that fun of a way to play the game. So once cycling left standard, her utility dropped to an insane degree where she's barely even playable in standard. We've had varying degrees of strength in the blue and green color area. Well, I think Kasmina is the best Planeswalker in the game for me. We'll see how we feel about it after going through Oko and his abilities here. So we got +3 to blue and green and +2 to black. No negatives, but I really am not a big fan of having a dual color Planeswalker that only gets +3 on his colors. I think that this color pie is okay for tri-color walkers. I still don't love it. I would still want to see more mana bonuses, but for a dual color Planeswalker, I just really don't like it. He does make up for it in some of his abilities, though, so let's just go ahead and go into that. I'll just say that 110 hit points is pretty good. Not amazing, but his total life has not been an issue for me yet. But I think that's due to the strength of his abilities. Let's talk about the first one. So we got Gold Fever, which is his first ability. So you create 4 gold tokens and draw 2 cards. And if you've committed a crime, those cards gain half their mana, otherwise gain the crime emblem. So even without the crime emblem, it's a pretty good ability. Creating 4 gold tokens and drawing 2 cards. Drawing 2 cards is nice because, it's giving you some extra cards in your hand to do stuff with. But also creating 4 gold tokens means that you have the possibility to get 12 extra mana from matching those gold tokens. Will you do that? Probably not on your first swap after triggering this ability, but that's okay. You actually want to keep a gold token or 2 around for later anyhow. So I think this was a well-designed ability. So you do need to trigger it twice to get those cards half their mana, unless, you already have the crime emblem with other ways. In my decks, spoiler alert, I didn't play really with any other crime cards. I just didn't feel necessary, and I don't think I saw a lot of cards that were really worth using, at least that I have in my collection yet. So I like that he can create his own crime emblem just from his abilities. But yeah, drawing 2 cards and making them gain half their mana is really strong. That makes this a really good ability, even if you have to use it twice to get that effect from it. But if you're able to use this ability twice, you're going to be creating 8 gold tokens. So that's a really good amount of mana if you were to pop all of those. Either way, you're getting a lot of mana out of this ability. But there is a catch to it. You have to have the room to draw the 2 cards to your hand to gain the crime emblem. I noticed that's happened to me before where I thought that I had the crime emblem already when I ramped up to his 3rd, but I didn't because I didn't get the crime emblem from the first ability when I thought I should have. Hopefully they fix this so that that's not a requirement. Even if they don't, it's still a solid ability. Partner Duplicate. Second ability. Create a copy of target non-token creature you control into your hand. That copy gains full mana. I forgot to write gains there. Then, if you committed a crime, reinforce that creature. So this one synergizes with the first ability because you have that crime emblem, you get an extra boost to your creature. And yeah, depending on what type of deck you're running, I think some of the other content creators probably showcase this ability a little bit better than I do here. As you'll see soon, I really leaned into his first and third abilities in my showcase decks, but this is a really strong ability, especially if you're using cards that have good enter the board effects. You know, if you're running GTA, obviously this is going to be a good ability for that because you can just copy any one of those three creatures and you're going to get a lot out of it. So that's pretty awesome. And then, you know, reinforcing a creature, depending on what you're doing, trying to win fast, that's going to help you a bit. Even though this is a great ability, it's the one I used the least because it really depends on what creatures you have into play that you even would want to copy one. Like if you only have like a 2/2 creature on the board, you might want to copy him just so that you have an extra one in case it gets destroyed. But I found that this ability works a lot better with creatures that are strong off the bat. So that reinforcing them makes a bigger difference. And then next we got Thunder Heist, ability 3, and this is where he gets amazing. So we create 3 Grand Heist tokens, and if you've committed a crime, create 8 gold tokens. The Grand Heist tokens, they are a support card. They do reinforce, so you end up with a 9 shield support at level 60. So when a gold token is destroyed during your turn, so it has to be during your turn, it's the only thing kind of balancing this ability out. Fetch a random card from your opponent's hand. If you can't fetch the first card from your opponent's library, then that card gains full mana. And at the beginning of your turn, the support loses 1 shield. This ability is really where Oko shines. You're taking your opponent's cards right out of their hand or out of their library, and you get to play them on your turn most of the time because you're going to be destroying gold tokens and you're going to be creating a lot of gold tokens as well, but I'll show you ways to destroy them. You're going to be taking the cards from your opponent and not letting them use them, and you're going to be using them yourself and taking advantage of all the cards you're stealing from them. From what I found in a lot of the decks that I went against, I was stealing a lot of cards like Galta and all that, so I'm getting a lot of loyalty back. So I could easily spam this ability and just create tons more gold for myself and really just putting all of the momentum and advantage on my side. And so really all you need to do is just cram your deck with your own sort of defensive spells or supports or whatever, and then also other cards that help you ramp up into loyalty so you can get to these abilities faster. And that's really all you need to do to dominate with him. He does take a little bit of setting up, but once you do, it's just really hard for your opponent to deal with what you can do with him. So it's an amazing ability. It's one of the best that have been in the game in a really long time. I feel like it's right on the level of something like Dakon's third. Maybe not quite as oppressive as Liliana's third, at least right away. But in a way, it's got a similar power level where it just really makes it hard for your opponent to come back from. Only thing it's not doing is creating a win con on its own, but it's really swinging the momentum onto your side when you get those gold tokens destroyed. So it's a little bit more of a delayed effect in that regard. When this guy's out for crystals, I think people are just going to really start fearing him like the way they did Liliana of the Veil. But we'll see. His pros, his abilities make up for mediocre mana gains by giving you mana through gold tokens and then full mana stolen cards. And his third ability is great defensively due to his ability to deny your opponent's hand and their library to some degree, but it's really more about stealing cards from your opponent and letting you use them for free. So there are ways to put more cards into your opponent's hand just so that you can steal more cards for free from them. But I found it not to be super necessary. You can just, the fact that you can steal them from your library makes this ability even crazier. So really the only cons that I would say with him is obviously his mana gains, and we talked about that before. His second and third abilities are only as good as what's on your side of the battlefield or what you can steal from your opponent. So my advice for him is to have on your side at least one card that's a pretty strong win con for you, because what's possible is that you run up against a really not a great deck. So you're stealing all these cards from them. And even if you steal all 10 of their cards, it might not just be a very good deck. So it might be a slow, laborious win. You'll still win, but it might not be as fun as when you steal, Galtas and Tortoises and Atraxes and all that, or whatever, Railway Brawlers, some of the other fun, scary stuff we have out right now. So now I've gone through the pros and cons of him, let me show you the decks that I built. All right, so this first deck that I have going on here, it's really all just built around trying to get to his loyalties and just doing some defensive things we got going on here. So I don't know if you watched my stream of my pack openings for this set, but I got some great stuff, including Demolition Field and Desolate Mire. I really wanted those supports because they're really strong. Demolition Field will not only gain me mana, but it will destroy supports on my opponent's side. The reason I like this card is because it does two things that I really like, which is both defensive and it gains me mana. So it really fits into a lot of my deck strategies where I sort of preach having your cards doing more than one thing for you at a time. So the better that those multiple effects are, the better the card. Same with Desolate Mire. Desolate Mire works even when your opponent doesn't have supports in play. What's nice is that it gives you extra mana, even if you're not matching gems of your own color. So it's going to be really helping you with gaining extra mana and making up for the deficiencies in his built-in mana gains. And then Tempt with Discovery obviously is a giant gem conversion spell, so that's good for obvious reasons. Assimilation Aegis is a new one I really like. This was definitely a chase card for me. It's going to stop a lot of combos in their tracks, ones that are based on creatures, especially because, especially like with GTA, the most important thing about that combo is the strength of the creatures enter the battlefield effect. So if you have Assimilation Aegis down, you can just stop that before it starts. And, this is like Suppression Bonds, but it's got a lot more shields, and blue Planeswalkers can use it too. So really good to have. Urza Saga, I'm going to be taking advantage of all the gold tokens I'm going to be creating. I'm going to be making a ton of loyalty gems. And yeah, just look at how big this construct can get too. So it's even a win con on its own. Steam Core Scholar is a great new card. Well, it's new to me. I know it came out in MERS at Carlo Manor, but I had to craft it. And I'm really glad I did because he's not too expensive. You can get him out in a couple blue or green matches. So he immediately starts giving you some good utility. I mostly have him in here for the loyalty that he generates. But the longer he stays on the battlefield, the more utility you get out of him. He is a little bit vulnerable. You do lose him to creature removal fairly quickly, so I'm glad he has some continuous effect that you can take advantage of as soon as you put him on the battlefield. Holo Gemstone, again, not only is it going to be pumping up our meager mana bonuses along with Sunken Citadel, but we're getting an extra swap, and it's a little bit of a defensive card as well. Sunken Citadel is not one I love playing, but it's got a good enter the board effect. We're mostly using it for the mana bonus bump. Cut Your Losses, again, not as strong of a gem conversion effect as Tempt with Discovery, but it's way cheaper, and we can trigger the casualty again. If we steal a creature from them, we could just sack it if it's not a good one, or if we don't need Steam Core Scholar anymore, for example, that we can get more gem conversion out of it. And then Colossal Rattleworm, I like this one because it's a decent sized creature and it can grow, but really I like the destroying 10 random gems part of it when it attacks. So that's going to be destroying a bunch of gold tokens, and that's going to be stealing cards from our opponent. So this one is just all optimized to take full advantage of his first and third abilities, and I feel like it's done really well for me so far. But if you don't have all these cards, fear not, I have a budget version for you. So this deck I built just to drive the point home that his abilities are so strong, you don't need a deck full of crazy mythics and masterpieces to dominate. This deck easily carried me through Legacy Training Grounds one day, and it's mostly Origins. There are no mythics and masterpieces in this. These are a lot of commons, a lot of Origins cards, so you'll probably have a lot of them already. The only one that I think is really important for this deck is Steam Core Scholar, because you want to ramp up to its loyalty as soon as you can. Gold Rush is a pretty decent little card. It's one of the few ways in Standard right now to create gold tokens in green. So this makes it really useful for him to have. And I don't think blue has very many gold token generators either. But yeah, if you look at what else is in this deck, we got Nissa's Pilgrimage, Harbinger of the Tides, Yavimaya Coast, Turn to Frog. Those are all Origins cards. And the reason I chose these cards, I was pretty careful in my selection of a lot of these cards. Harbinger of the Tides, Turn to Frog, Broker's Charm, and Crawl Whipcracker especially. They have good enter the board effects, and they're good defensive enter the board effects. So that's going to keep us safe as we move our way through the battle here. Hedge Maze, Lush Oasis, they're the new lands. They convert a lot of gems for us, so having that continuous gem conversion every turn is going to help us get to our loyalty abilities faster. But it's really all about using our loyalty abilities and just stealing our opponent's cards that are hopefully better than ours that we're playing with. I mean, they're most likely going to be. I mean, you can just see how often I can trigger his abilities, steal them, and eventually recover from wherever we're at as we're setting up our side of the board. So I would say if you're going to do something like this for him and you just don't have a big collection yet, keep in mind cards that have strong enter the battlefield effects. Load up on defensive cards, load up on cards that will give you loyalty matches and or gem conversion so that you can get to triggering his abilities as soon as you can. The more you do that, the quicker you'll win. I will say, though, that this deck is not a very fast one. It is considerably slower than some of the other decks I've built for him, but the main thing is that just about anybody can build a similar deck to this, and it's really dominant. As you can see in this battle, I'm just taking advantage of all the great cards that my opponent puts out. They end up on my side. As I steal theirs, I clear out anything that they might still have on their side as we go. And then, yeah, just completely flip the board state to my advantage and go from there. So this makes him a really good planeswalker for certain events, and I would recommend him for newer players as well. I want to show you a really fun deck that's a little bit independent of Oko. You can run this next one in any blue-green deck, but I wanted to show you that you can have some overpowered fun with him as well in different ways. He's a little more versatile than just using your opponent's cards against them. Okay, so I heard some of you like loops. Let's show you one here. This one is built all around Satoru the Infiltrator and Geralf the Fleshwright. And what I've discovered with Satoru, especially when paired with Chimil, he can really generate a lot of mana. So when you're putting a creature into play, which is what Geralf will be doing, you can just continually draw cards and put mana into the first card in your hand. So Giralf creates a zombie, Satoru gets triggered and draws another card, and it gets mana from it. So it's almost like the Rumor Gatherer, Hallowed Haunting loop decks that I've had before, but it's for blue and black. With Oko having blue, you can take advantage of it. And I'm using some other looping cards in this deck, like Follow the Bodies, Time Reversal. These are all cards that generate a lot of mana as you go. But what I've noticed is that if you have Chimmel on the board, for some reason, Satoru will just draw that card and give it half its mana. Not sure exactly why. Maybe it's a bug. Maybe it's not. I don't actually know. I can't quite figure out why that's happening. But every time I draw a card with Chimmel on the and Satoru on the board, after I create a zombie rogue, it's giving that new card half its mana. The 4 mana that Satoru generates goes into the next card without full mana. So it's really good at creating a loop because you're just continuously putting more and more mana into your hand as you go. And then also as we go, that zombie road just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So it's a really nice win con, and everything else is just there to keep things going. Urgent Necropsy is obviously good because you're going to be creating so many clue tokens, gold tokens, whatnot, and anything that ends up on your opponent's side is going to get wiped out. You're not even going to have to really worry about it. You just keep going until you win here. So I put Tyvar Jubilant Brawler in here because I found sometimes that I'll go on this long loop and then not even be able to attack with it on that turn, and then sometimes it gets wiped off the board before I get a chance to use it. But Giralf and Satoru are a really good combo of cards. I put Outlaw Stitcher in here just as an extra way to get things going. It's not super necessary. You can easily take it out for something else, but he was the only other card that I found that created a zombie rogue, at least in my collection right now. But what I like about the Outlaw Stitcher is that it has the crime emblem, so we can commit a crime by casting him. So there's a little bit of synergy there with his abilities. But this is a deck that I'm showcasing only for the neat interaction between these cards. It's a little bit less dependent on his abilities to work, though, you know, you could take advantage of those abilities in here as well. As you keep looping, you might be destroying some gold tokens as you go. All right, let's hand out some grades for Mr. Oko, the ringleader. Let's start with his max hit points, as we always do. Giving him a B for this. You know, 110 is respectable. There's a big difference between 140 and 110, but from what I found, it's a perfectly fine amount of hit points to have to be able to do everything you need to do. You don't have to worry about dipping too low in hit points as you go. His abilities make up for it by being as defensive as they are. It's a pretty straightforward one. The higher the hit points, the higher the grade. So there you go. The mana spread, you know, even though I showed you ways to get around it, it's still not a good mana spread. So I gotta knock him, give him only a C plus for it. I just wish he had a little. It's not super necessary for him to have, but I just do wish that he had a little bit more. Even if he got like +4 on blue or something like that, it would be fine for me. I would bump it up to maybe a B- if he got one more on them. But if he had +4 on both green and blue, I'd probably bump his mana spread up to a B plus, probably like a B plus, maybe even an A-. But yeah, I just don't really love flat spreads when it comes to mana. So with all the negatives out of the way, let's get to the good grades. So his first ability, I give that an A plus because it just gives you so much from it. And even though its third ability is slightly dependent on it, it's a strong ability on its own. The potential for gaining mana is really good on it. The only thing that would be even better for this ability, would make it an S tier ability, is if you got to choose which cards that you draw next and get the half their mana from. But, if you run surveil cards or something like that, you can kind of do that in different ways. So still a great ability. A plus is a fantastic grade for an ability. So don't worry. And then ability 2. So this is an A ability for me. It really depends on what you have going on. And from what I've found in my own play, I've not been very reliant on it. So I just don't use it nearly as much as my other abilities. But that is not to say that this isn't a great ability itself. It's just not one that really fits into the ways that I've played with Oko so far. And then that ability 3, this ability is so good. It makes him able to be used. It really expands the possibilities of his usefulness, really, because it gives any collection a fighting chance against stronger opponents. And it's really strong because it's not only is it a super good defensive ability, but it also just swings the tempo in your favor almost every time. So it is an S plus tier ability. It's one of the best abilities that have hit the game in a long time. So not only is it almost always very fun, but it's just so strong. Versatility. So I gave him an S in versatility because, yeah, you can build your own really strong deck for him. I mean, I've only been showcasing decks that take advantage of the strength of your opponents, but that is not to say that you can't build a great deck around him and that he can't run all the stupid broken stuff that we already have available to us. He can run GTA just as well as anyone else. The only thing that slightly holds him back with that is that mana spread. So you do still need ways to generate loyalty, but even so, he is perfectly fine to run any of those green blue decks that you are already accustomed to using with Kasmina, for example. So the amount of different things that you could do with this guy makes him so versatile. The amount of different play styles that are not only built into him, but that you can come up with for him just makes him top tier in versatility. And then card utility. So the difference between versatility and card utility. Versatility is like what kind of cards can he build and be successful with. And then card utility is more about, does he need good cards to shine, or does he make the cards he has better with his abilities? And I would say kind of somewhere in the middle of those. He doesn't necessarily make the cards in his deck better, except for maybe a second ability, reinforcing and copying whatever creature you want. But the fact that you can use like anybody's cards and put them into play on your side makes him really strong in that regard. So I give him an A plus in card utility. His abilities don't necessarily make the cards better, but it just expands the range of cards that you can use. And then fun. He is an S tier fun for me because there's a certain amount of satisfaction from just denying your opponent's ability to run stupid broken combos like GTA, anything like that. But the only slight downside is when you run into a deck that is not very strong, and then you end up playing all these weak cards against them. You're still winning. You're still having a good time winning in that way, but it's a little more boring when they don't have the ability to play overpowered cards against you. So sometimes it can be a slog in that way. So my final grade for him, he is an A plus walker. And maybe some people will be a little bit disappointed in my not giving him an S tier grade, but there's just a few little things that I have to knock him for. That mana spread sucks. His max hit points can be a little bit more, but if any of those things don't matter to you, then I have no issue with anybody else giving him an S tier designation. So yeah, final thoughts about him. What I've been noticing about Webcore in their Planeswalker design philosophy is that what I've noticed about Webcore is that they're really going for synergy between first and third abilities, and then their second ability tends to be just kind of its own standalone ability, which is fine. I think his first and third ability not being completely tied to each other is nice, because if you create gold tokens in a different way, then you don't necessarily have to have the crime emblem to steal cards, but why wouldn't you? That first ability is really good, so it's worth also spamming that third ability in conjunction with the first, with that crime emblem going. You're going to be creating so many gold tokens, and then gold tokens are really good token supports on their own. So I haven't even really talked about what you can do with this guy in Legacy, like Old Gnawbone. You're going to be pretty much stealing everything from your opponent just by getting Gnawbone on the board and that third ability, Grand Heist token. So yeah, kudos to Webcore. I really had fun with this Planeswalker. I think he's the best Planeswalker to hit the game in a really long time. Is he better than Commodore Guff to me? I would say so. Not by a ton, because I really like Commodore Guff, but he is really worth picking up for crystals. I mean, if you have the money to pick him up and you have been waiting for a good Planeswalker, he gets my highest recommendation to spend money on. But even if you don't, definitely as soon as he hits the vault for crystals, grab him. Don't wait until the Christmas sale. I know people want to save crystals for that to pick up all the Planeswalkers that they're kind of on the fence about. This guy, don't sit on the fence with this guy. He is worth having in your collection, no matter who you are. I would go so far as to say that I would put him, for beginner players, I would put him over Kazmina as their first blue-green walker to pick up. That's how much I believe in his abilities and just his own ability to play with small and large collections alike, which is a really good litmus test for Planeswalkers to recommend to newer players. There you have it. Really looking forward to sharing with you some more decks. If you don't know already, I've been doing some live streams where I'll just take a card that I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time making a whole video for, but I definitely feel like they're worth showcasing. So I just did Vihan. On my main page here, just go to the live tab and check out what I've got going on there so far. So if you don't want to miss a live stream, make sure your notifications for me are turned on, and you'll get notified when my next live stream happens or my next video. And I have some ideas for videos in the works, and I'm looking forward to sharing those with you soon. All right, till next time. See you then.